Before I get into this response to KennytheSage on the Gazan flotilla incident, I want to mention the fact that the flotilla was in international waters when it was stopped. Kenny didn't mention that in his video originally, but added an annotation acknowledging that it was in international waters. The annotation also said that it didn't really matter because the flotilla was going to break the blockade anyway. I will accept this claim for the sake of argument for now, but later I will show that it does matter. First, I'm going to play a clip from the video which I will address along with other parts of the video which I will not take clips from, and I'll address those all at once, and then I will address a few specific clips briefly.
Okay, so the international community has largely condemned Israel for the deaths of the activists. However, I think that this is too rash of and too quick of a response. I think that the activists clearly knew what they were getting into. It's not like they didn't realize that the blockade existed. It's not like they didn't realize that they were transporting materials prohibited by the blockade to the Gaza Strip. They knew that they were carrying contraband. They knew that they would be intercepted. Israel is being attacked. Has been receiving attacks via rocket and whatnot, and I think from the Gaza Strip, and I think that their blockade in the efforts to reduce those attacks is justified. What else are they supposed to do? I really don't see how Israel can be condemned. I don't see how Israel can be condemned by their actions. It seems to me that they were totally justified in intercepting the flotilla, given that it was carrying materials that could be used in war efforts. It seems totally justified to me that they reacted with violent force once they were attacked with violent force.
There are two criteria by which this flotilla fiasco can be judged. One is legality, the other is moral acceptability. KennytheSage conflates the two in the video to which I'm responding, but as we will see, it ends up not mattering much. I say that he conflates the two because much of his video appeals to the fact that the activists were knowingly attempting to violate the blockade. Kenny seems to believe that because the activists were going to break the blockade by taking in items that were prohibited, they deserved to be stopped because they were doing it on purpose. The problem with this is that it assumes that just because Israel has a blockade, it is a just blockade, and its violation is a sin. In fact, it is a spectacularly unjust blockade, and the items the flotilla was taking should be allowed in any country in the world. Kenny calls the offending items contraband and says they might be used in war efforts without explaining what they are. Israel was preventing building supplies such as cement and steel beams from entering. Not weapons, not drugs, cement. Gazans deserve cement. This blockade of building materials has made it very difficult for Gaza to recover from Israel's invasion of Gaza, which ended in 2009. The UN Relief and Works Agency resorted to building mud huts in 2009 for the Gazans because there were so many living in temporary housing. A bit more evidence that the blockade is unjust. According to an organization I found called Gisha, Israel has not released the list of what is banned, so often aid organizations attempt to take food into Gaza and are turned away. The Israelis are inconsistent about what they turn away as well, so it is difficult to be completely certain that this or that type of food will get through. Gisha has deduced some of the items that are banned by the blockade based on what has been turned away pretty consistently. Before I read from that list, I want to note that a few of these are not banned for international organizations, but many of them are. The banned items include, give me 1 second while I switch over to the list. Funnily enough, the first one is sage is banned. Cumin, coriander, ginger, jam, halva, vinegar, nutmeg, chocolate, fruit preserves, seeds and nuts, biscuits and sweets, potato chips, gas for soft drinks, dried fruit, fresh meat, plaster, tar, wood for construction, cement, iron, glucose, industrial salt, plastic/glass/metal containers, industrial margarine, tarpaulin hut sheets for huts, fabric for clothing, flavor and smell enhancers, fishing rods, various fishing nets, buoys, ropes for fishing, nylon nets for greenhouses, hatcheries and spare parts for hatcheries, spare parts for tractors, dairies for cowsheds, irrigation pipe systems, ropes to tie greenhouses, planters for saplings, heaters for chicken farms, musical instruments, size A4 paper, writing implements, notebooks, newspapers, toys, razors, sewing machines, and spare parts, heaters, horses, donkeys, goats, cattle, and chicks. And I'm sure that's not the complete list. And these bans on food are leading to massive reductions in food availability for Gazans. According to the UN, the prevalence of household food insecurity is 61%. To give some perspective, that is more than double Niger's, which is at 28%. According to Gisha, the level of goods getting into Gaza was about 25% in 2009 of what it was before June 2007. The protesters were protesting the starvation and collective punishment of the entire Gaza Strip. Kenny suggests in his video that the protesters should have tried other means to calling attention to what is happening in Gaza. But do you think that we would have had this much attention focused on Gaza were it not for their actions? Do you think Egypt would have opened their borders to Gazans, as I just learned they have, were it not for the activists' so-called rash actions? And anyway, if KennytheSage thinks that legality is the most important criterion, even if we accept his claim that it doesn't matter that this happened in international waters, he should still think that what the Israelis did was wrong because the blockade is probably a war crime and was found to be so by the United Nations in a report. Collective punishment is illegal under international law. The blockade is neither just nor legal.
In fact, one news agency, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but it'll be linked in the underbar, even reported that the flotilla altered their course such that they would be intercepted by the Israeli Navy during the daytime in order to increase publicity, and in order to increase the capacity for the activists to record the interception. So it seems to me like it's pretty clear that these activists were engaging in this activity in order to gain publicity, in order to create a scene and draw attention to the blockade.
So, that's the point of protests, to get publicity. KennytheSage mentions this as if it is some sinister act for them to try to have more publicity, when the whole point is to get more publicity about the Gazan blockade.
If I'm holding a gun at somebody, pointing a gun at somebody, and I say, don't come any closer or I'll fire in self-defense, if you turn around and walk away, I won't attack you, and that person then continues to walk forward, and I do fire on him, I think that person should have been expecting what they were getting, and I think that it's that person's own fault for getting themselves harmed.
If this is all it takes for the person holding their gun to be acting justly, why not use the same argument against protesters of any kind, those killed in Thailand or Iran, Martin Luther King Jr. since he had death threats, Malcolm X for that matter?